So hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's session with BNID. You don't want to hear from me. You've seen me plenty. So I will immediately turn it over to our friend and colleague Nanako to sort of introduce the event and the panel. So thank you all for being here, students and panelists, and our facilitator. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I know people are still kind of coming in, so I'm going to just say a few remarks and say a little bit about BNID because I know you're really here to hear from our panelists and also not from me. But just to introduce myself, my name is Nanako Tamaru, and I am the executive director at the Boston Network for International Development, which we call BNID for short. Some of you might also recognize me because I also teach at Heller. I teach in the COEX program, and so just really excited to be able to bring together all of the students here today, as well as BNID and our colleagues joining us from other organizations. Today, they'll be sharing information about their careers and any career advice. I know a lot of you are looking for jobs and internships coming up, so a lot of great information that we'll dive into in a moment. I just wanted to start by telling you all a little bit about BNID in case this is your first interaction with us. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. For some reason, my computer is a little slow. Oh, that doesn't seem to be working. Bear with me. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. Great. So just a few words to say about BNID. So we've been around for almost 20 years, which is incredible, and we really serve as a point of connection for groups and individuals who are interested in international development and global justice. And we define international development really broadly. So it's not just like for SID colleagues. We define it more like the international aid or international affairs sector. So that includes peace building, humanitarian aid, development, diplomacy, human rights, all aspects of kind of the international aid sector. And we work a lot with students like yourselves and universities to help make connections between students and potential employers or colleagues, right, at organizations, INGOs that are based here in the greater Boston area. And we also work with, for those of you, once you graduate, if you stay in the Boston area, we also work with organizations here to help make connections between practitioners and organizations to help share knowledge and resources. I just want to share a few things just to let you know that BNID does that could be of interest to you. We hold 2 to 3 networking events each year. Our last event in the fall had a huge Heller turnout, which was awesome. And it's really a great opportunity to meet other students from other schools, as well as people who are doing international aid work here in Boston, as well as folks who are just really passionate about human rights and other parts of the international aid sector. We have a job board on our webpage that features internships and job opportunities at all levels, entry level up to more senior executive levels. We also have an event board, which is a great place to see events that are happening off campus. I know sometimes it's hard to get off campus, but events that are happening around the Boston area at other schools. MIT and Harvard post a lot of events, but also, organizations like Oxfam will post a lot of their events as well. So just again, more opportunities to grow your own professional network in the area. We at BNID also have semester-long and summer internships. So if you're interested in working with us, it's another way to get connected. Just going to share this resources. I would say the things you might want to sign up for to keep in touch with us would be our newsletter, which comes out every 2 weeks and highlights events and other things that are happening in the greater Boston area. We have a LinkedIn group, and then we also have the regular kind of social media. But this is, again, a great way to grow your network as you start to look for jobs and trying to figure out, what am I going to do after graduation? This is a great way to just learn more about the many organizations. I went to grad school here, and when I was in grad school, I had no idea how many organizations there are in the Boston area doing interesting international work. And so being connected with BNID is a great way to learn about just all the different types of organizations that are here. And there's like over 100. It's actually pretty incredible. But today, here, let me stop sharing my screen. Today, what we've done is we've brought together, we have 3 panelists who will be joining us, who are really here to talk about their own career experiences, as well as to give you all advice as you're starting to think about, again, internships and entering the workforce after, or perhaps re-entering the workforce after your graduation. Our 3 panelists are Simar Singh from Refuge Point. We have Karen D'Agostino joining us from the Perkins School for the Blind, and Jean Claude Mugunga joining us from Partners in Health. I'm not going to do their long intros because I want them to be able to introduce themselves. So let's just go ahead and jump right in, because I also want to leave time for questions from you all. So why don't we just start with really general? So maybe panelists, if you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career path and kind of what led you to your current position today. Maybe let's start with Simar, and then we'll go Karen and Jean Claude.
Great. Thanks so much, Nanako. Thanks for inviting me to this panel, and hello, everyone. As Nanako mentioned, my name is Simar Singh, and I am currently working for an organization called Refuge Point. I'll mention a little bit more about Refuge Point in a minute. I guess I'll start at the beginning. Just brief background. I grew up in India and came to the US for college a number of years ago. And really, I would say my career path has sort of been squarely within the humanitarian sector. My very first job out of college was in the humanitarian sector, and I guess I've never looked back. I've spent about 10 years right out of college focusing on the protection of children during war. That was a big focus of my work. And really that work helped me understand the experience of children and families during conflict, and also the experience of people, first responders, humanitarian aid workers, community members, who are on the front lines trying to provide aid and support to civilians during war. About 5 years ago, I started focusing on refugee protection and well-being. So in a way, my career sort of followed along with families that are caught in conflict and emergency settings, and then more recently, those families who are forced to flee their homes. And along the way, especially over the last 5 years, I've really shifted my attention to thinking about the systems and services that are needed to support people who are forced to flee on their journeys. That's sort of broadly, like thematically, where I've been focused. My career path, like really over the last many years, has included a mix of different things and functions. So I've had jobs that have focused on research and advocacy, building networks and coalitions, managing programs. And I do a little bit of all of that in my current role as Chief Program Officer at Refuge Point. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Refuge Point is an international humanitarian NGO that supports refugees to live safe and dignified lives. We're based in Boston. We have our small little headquarters here. We have another office in Kenya, and we have staff sort of globally around the world. I'll stop there and hand it back over to you, Nanako. Thanks.
Thanks, Simar. Let's go over to Karen.
Great. Helps if I take myself off mute. Hello, I'm Karen D'Agostino, and I am currently the Director of Talent Acquisition at Perkins School for the Blind here in Watertown. This is my first time working in a nonprofit, and I kind of got here through a word that you'll hear me say often, networking. So it's very important as you think about careers and jobs and opportunities. You just never know where the next opportunity is going to be based upon who you know or who you get introduced to. I actually started my career as a preschool teacher. So that was interesting. But I realized I wasn't nice enough to be a preschool teacher and would literally drive up to the school going, I'm just not that nice. And I also wanted to move to Boston, and the cost of living was a little bit higher here than in living at mom and dad. So moved to Boston and got a job as administrative assistant in a recruiting firm. And that's how I got into recruitment. And I won't tell you how many years ago that was because none of you were even born or a thought. So I've been in recruiting in the Boston market for a very long time. The last 20 years of my career was spent in executive search. And again, I got into executive search because I was out with friends one night. One of the guys there said he had just met this really cool company. I'm like, that's cool. He introduced them to me and they hired me. So again, the networking. So I spent a number of years with a boutique search firm focused on the venture capital and private equity world. We subsequently got bought by Korn Ferry. Korn Ferry is a global executive search firm. So I spent 7 years as a partner at Korn Ferry, and then jumped to a small firm, Palaki, where my focus was still emerging growth, really recruiting executives to emerging growth technologies. So all the C-suites to that. Pandemic hit, 2020 came. We closed our firm down, and in the back of my mind, I'd always wanted to get into a nonprofit, but didn't know quite how. How do I transfer my skills from executive search to a nonprofit? Dave Power is the CEO of Perkins International. Dave was a venture capitalist. In my prior life, I worked with Dave Power on various assignments for not only his firm, but also companies that he was recruiting for. He introduced me to his chief people officer. We clicked. She's like, I'm not sure what role we have, but we got to find something for you. And here I am 2 years later. It's been amazing. Perkins is a pretty unique place. I know when I joined it, I always think of them as wonderful school in Watertown, which they are, but we're so much more than that. We are a global NGO, and we reach hundreds of millions of children throughout the world. We are in over 100 countries. And right now we're in a strategic growth initiative to build that impact on a global basis. So it's been exciting. We're going through a transformation and taking this kind of well-oiled machine, and as I joke, kind of breaking it all apart and moving it forward, really transforming, looking for people who are creative, can think courageously, be collaborative, and take ownership. And we're also upgrading all our systems. So we're going through major systems upgrades to Workday and Salesforce. So there's a lot going on, and it's all about forward thinking. How can we reach more children? How can we do what we do best better? So there's been a lot going on in the past 2 years, and it's been phenomenal. So lots of opportunities.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. I will go last to Jean Claude.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Nanako, for inviting us, and nice to meet you, everybody. I'm Jean Claude. My career actually started, the current one I'm in, that I can share with you in a minute. It started from HELA. So I went to the HELA school for my master's of science in global health policy and management. I finished 10 years ago in 2012. So before that, I was a general practitioner, a physician in Rwanda, where I grew up and was working. So, but coming to HELA, I was looking to really go global, but also back at home in Rwanda, try to understand fully the issues of population health. There was a lot of financing issues of healthcare. We were always stocked out in our hospitals, and the beds and patients could not pay. Sometimes we were told to deny them care, waiting for them to buy insurance. All of those things made me really take a step back to focus not on one patient at a time, but more on a systems level, what I currently define as population health management. So I'm currently the Deputy Chief Medical Officer at Partners in Health, which is a global organization. We're a non-profit, started a few decades ago by the late Dr. Paul Farmer, who recently passed away. So I've been working here for the last 9 years. I started in the monitoring and evaluation department you can imagine some of you who are in MS program, we had so much quantitative courses, things like also the economics courses. All of those, I brought them here, analyzing a bunch of health programs that we're doing here at PIH. So from there, I was, of course, promoted to this current job on a clinical leadership since I'm a physician, but I continue to lead that population health management, which really looks at all of the countries we work in. How can we provide the best patient care, and also look at how much it costs us. So I'm fully embedded in health economics and costing of our interventions, as well as making sure patients get best outcomes. So that means I look into research, many data, all of that, to justify every dollar we invest from donors. So I look forward to discussing a little more, but nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. You're such an impressive group of people, and I love that your stories are all a little bit different, right? Simar, like you walked into your career and it just was the right fit. I like Karen, you've kind of done a bunch of different things and seen kind of how our careers evolve. And Jean Claude, I love that you started in clinical practice and have moved kind of into the policy space. And it's just great to have your different perspectives here. Maybe one more question about kind of your careers and what you're doing now. Just wondering, you know, what, sorry, I just realized, pulled up the wrong screen. What do you find most rewarding about your job, and maybe what is most challenging, right? All of our jobs, there's great parts and there's more challenging parts. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about kind of what inspires you and kind of what your experience has been. Let's reverse the order. We'll go back to Jean Claude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, off the bat, the most challenging and the most rewarding for my job is actually it's the same thing. So working with people from different countries, different cultures, different needs, US, all of the 11 countries we work in, it's very rewarding for me, but it's also extremely challenging in a way that we struggle sometimes to understand each other, and also trying to tailor our health services to the local realities. Sometimes I don't know everything, so that's a challenge. So I've been always trying to learn if I'm really trying to think of what the best healthcare possible for the people of Lesotho. Go sit down with the Basotho where we work. The mountains are different. In Rwanda, we use roads. There, they use horses. So we've been really trying to do things differently. So those are challenges that I also find a very rewarding part of my job. So yeah, I will stop on that one.
Yeah, thank you. Tackling challenges around, you know, making sure that your solutions are context specific is always, you learn so much about other cultures that you had no idea.
Right.
Karen,
Exactly.
Karen, what about you?
That's an amazing part. Again, to the point I made earlier, is coming from a for-profit. People in Parsons are just genuinely kind. I mean, not to say that people in emerging tech world are not kind, but there's just that mission behind the work, and that no matter what your role is on campus. I mean, I talked to our security manager, and just the passion he has for his job to protect the students. And then you talk to, our executive director of international, who's all over the world, like just a different person, different type of role, but it all comes down to why we're all there. And it's just a really unique community that I hadn't experienced before in my prior career. And so that's just been amazing. And then I get to look out my window on campus and I see the kids, that you can really see the impact that you're having on a daily basis. And I can go into the cottages and have lunch with the students and just see how hard the staff work. I mean, the staff that has direct contact with the students, our students are obviously visually impaired, but they're multiple disabilities. So it's a very complex student that we work with. And the staff is just amazing. It's very challenging emotionally and physically. And the challenge is, I'm the recruiter. Finding good talent. It's a challenge. It's a tough market out there. And we're nonprofit, and we compete against, competitors that maybe are not a nonprofit that can afford to pay a little better or give some incentive bonuses. So it's kind of that unique combination that we're looking for, and so it's been a challenging market in the past couple of years in recruitment. I've never seen anything like it. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's go over to Simar.
Yeah, thanks, Nanako. I think a lot of what Karen and Jean Claude shared really resonates with me as well in terms of things that I find very rewarding about my job and also some of the challenges. Thinking of the positives, I would say first and foremost, it really is a privilege to work in the humanitarian sector. I know it sounds cheesy, but sort of getting to work on solutions to some of the biggest challenges that humanity is facing is something that is super rewarding. In particular, I would say just the opportunity to be able to positively change the trajectory of someone's life. It's humbling and exciting to come into work every day and to play a part in doing that. As Karen was saying, sort of just seeing the passion of folks who are joined with me in that mission is extremely rewarding. On sort of the challenges, I would say there are so many. Every day there is something new that pops up, but so I would definitely sort of plus one with what Jean Claude and Karen both mentioned. Those are real challenges that I face in my work as well. More broadly, something that is really on my mind a lot is in the humanitarian world, which is where I work, there are just compounding crises. You read the newspaper every day and there's another conflict, more refugees, more migrants, people in need. And the work that I'm doing, that my agency is doing, is really trying to move the needle on very big issues. And in some ways that requires a lot of patience to stay the course and to stay focused, and to do that in the context of economies, sort of crashing and rebounding and uncertainty of the pandemic, and just the challenges of being a nonprofit and having to make sure that we are well resourced to be able to address those, the bigger challenges that we're working towards. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for sharing. I think it just is, it's nice to, I think, give folks, especially folks who are newer to this sector, right, a bit of a glimpse into, some of the challenges or things that we face in any job, right? But there are some things that are really unique to the type of work that we all do here. Let's switch gears a little bit to now, you've shared a bit about your careers, about kind of the work that you do, but I'm sure students would just love to hear, right? You'd love to hear any advice or perspectives you have. So maybe we'll start with a question around just general advice you'd have for students who are, coming out of school and looking for that first job after grad school. And I think Simar and Jean Claude would love to hear kind of your experience or advice that you have for students who are coming that are that are international students, because I think that experience is different. And maybe Karen, you could just give some maybe general advice for all students. Actually, Karen, why don't we start with you this time?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of what I had said before, networking. You're at the Heller School. Jean Claude is a prime example of an alumni. Reach out to the alumni, go into LinkedIn, find that alumni that's at a really cool organization, and just say, hey, I'm graduating from Heller. Can I grab 5 minutes of your time? And it's a great way just to connect with people, because you just never know where that connection is going to bring you. And just be open to having those conversations. And Jean Claude might not have something for you now, but he might remember that conversation 6 months from now when something opens with his organization. He's like, oh, I met this person. That was awesome. And so it's a lot of the networking and putting yourself out there. And, we have great volunteer opportunities at Perkins. There was just we have a voter booth accessibility testing going on campus right now. And so we had a grad student from Boston College who just moved to the US from India, who's now at, it wasn't Boston, I think it was Boston College, one of those schools, one of the B schools, as a grad student, and came on board to help us with the testing as an observer because of the quantitative research that she's doing in grad school. So now she's known to us. You know, she's been on our campus, she's exposed to us. We have internship programs, and I'm sure all the organizations have internship programs. They're not always paid, but it's great experience to really get involved. You know, we have internship programs in our international program that can be remote. So it's all about that exposure. When you find something that you like, just do some research on it. Find out what groups around the town, where you want to be. You might not want to stay in Boston. Say you want to go to New York or Chicago or India. You know, look for interesting opportunities and see where the connections are, and just continually put yourself out there, and don't be afraid to look at an opportunity. You know, I always tell people, the goal of every interview is your opportunity to say no. You don't have to say yes. If you go through an interview process and it's not the right job for you, that's okay. Be honest, be transparent, because I'm going to remember you for the next time. You know, like, I like the fact that he told me it wasn't the right job, but his skill set could be somewhere else. So every conversation you have is an opportunity to network and connect with people.
Karen, maybe I could ask a follow-up question of you. And just since you've been kind of in the recruiting space, are there any, you know, things that you've seen as you've been recruiting that you know, either things to definitely try or things definitely not to do, that you might be able to share?
Okay, my pet peeve: do not have a spelling mistake on your resume. In my day, it was allowed because we didn't have spell check, but there's spell check. You know, that's the thing. You know, I will tell you, I do not read an entire resume. Because if I did every day, you know, do not send me a 3, 2, 3, 4 page resume. I am not going to read it. I am going to read where your education is, your level of education, and your skill set. And if you've been with a company for 2 years, 3 years, I want to see progression that you've made within that organization. But I don't need the fine details. Short, sweet, to the point, because most recruiters do not pay attention. We have attention issues. So we are transactional. We like to move things forward. So short, sweet, and to the point. And don't be afraid to reach out to the recruiter on LinkedIn and say, hey, I saw your job opportunity online. I'd love to connect with you. You know, just kind of make, you know, something a little bit different. Recruiters we love to talk. So, you know, we love to talk about our organization. So don't hesitate to reach out. And, you know, and just try to make your resume a little unique. What makes you different from the person that's sitting in the seat next to you in class? You know, it's because, you know, the experience that you got to wear. And that's what I was telling our CFO this the other day. She grew up in South Africa and has led digital transformations for the Red Cross, the World Wildlife Federation. She's lived in Switzerland and Germany and all over the world. And I'm just fascinated. And she grew up with 1 in 19 kids in a small community in South Africa. That's what recruiters want to hear, your story. Like, how did you get where you are? And that to me is fascinating. And and we love people who are curious. People who are curious and want to learn and are going to roll up their sleeves and do what it takes to learn. And especially in those entry-level jobs, that's what we're looking for. Somebody who's curious, somebody who's eager to learn and going to do the work to make things happen.
Thanks. That isn't me. I'm literally taking notes myself. Always good to know. So thank you for that. So I just learned a lot as well. So thank you so much for that. Let's go over Simar and Jean Claude. Yeah, if you guys could talk a little bit more about kind of as an international student, what that experience was like, trying to find your first job, and any advice, or, you know, looking back and what you wish you would have known back then. Simar, let's start with you.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've reflected on in my career is that, very much to Karen's point, I got my first job right out of college, and then my first job right out of grad school. through internships that I had done while I was in college and grad school. So I ended up working for full-time for the agencies where I had completed internships previously. So that is the most direct connection in terms of networking. It's sort of like a soft launching pad in both ways for the employer to get to know you and also to scope out, like, is this an agency, an issue that I'm interested in working with, interested in working on sort of more over the longer term. So networking is a huge one. Internships, if you are able to do that. I know that not all internships are paid, and that can present like practically a challenge. Not everyone has the ability to say, I'm going to do unpaid work for a while, hoping that it leads to full-time work. But yeah, I would say any sort of foot that you can get in the door through an internship, a consultancy. Sometimes it's easier to do short-term consulting work rather than an internship. Again, just as a way to get to know the agency. I think that's a big one. I actually realized a couple of years ago when I was moving to my current job, to Refuge Point, I had a bit of an existential crisis because I realized, wait a minute, all of my previous jobs, which I'd stayed in with those organizations for long periods of time, came through these personal connections. And I had a moment of saying, wait, I'm like fairly advanced in my career. I can't remember a time when I sort of just applied cold to an organization. And so I was a bit concerned about that. And I spoke to some folks, and when I was applying to Refuge Point, I didn't know anyone at the agency. So it was a sort of cold application in, and I'm happy to report that those processes do work. It's not only through connections, pre-existing connections, but it was a really interesting moment for me to look back and see, oh, we've all heard about networking, and I think that's something we're all emphasizing here today. But I was a bit surprised when I look back at my career just to see how powerful that connection from networking, from internships had been in sort of connecting me to jobs that I've had. So again, it's not the only way to get a job, but it is certainly helpful. I think the other thing that I would say is, and this is particularly the case for international students, which agency is going to sponsor you, which organization is going to sponsor you, how easy it is or isn't to get a visa is always going to be top of mind. And practically that will narrow down a lot of options that you have. And so one of the things that, this is again a reflection many years on that I've had, it certainly was not top of mind earlier in my career, is, for practical reasons, you may take the first job that you get, just to make sure that you have an income coming in, or there might be one agency that is willing to sponsor your visa as opposed to another. And that's absolutely fine to do. I think one of the things to just keep on your radar is that it's useful to always be intentional about your career path and practice. And that may mean, being practical. You can be practical and intentional. But the advice that I would have is just to sort of set a habit of checking in with yourself and your network on a regular basis. Sort of stopping and saying, okay, I took this because it was the opportunity presented to me, but is this really where I want to be? Can I utilize connections through my network, through my current job, through friends, through colleagues, classmates, to really get me closer to what it is that I want to do? And so I would say for me, that was a bit of an adjustment, going from being a student and saying, I'll take whatever I can get, to maybe becoming a more seasoned professional and saying, you can do that and also continue to be intentional in how you're growing your career.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, as we've heard, well, for many of us, myself included, my career has taken a lot of twists and turns along the way, either because I tried something and was like, nope, that's not a good fit, or some new interesting opportunity came along and I took it up. And so I like that about being kind of intentional, but also practical in reflecting on where you want to be. Jean Claude, over to you. What advice do you have to share?
I almost concur with everything that my colleagues said, but one thing I want to mention, especially for international students who are looking for two options right now. So the one option I'm thinking you might be looking is to follow your path, your career path, if you want to work in like in international development organizations. There are many around here, like Oxfam, that work also in our own countries that are in Africa, Asia, like Partners in Health, like Clinton Foundations. So like, you should start putting your options out there, regardless of geographic area, because that will launch you into your own comfortable career path that you came to the Hela School looking for. But there's also those of you who are looking for options to also have a job experience or working experience in the US. You're like, I came all of the way here. Why don't I look for jobs around here? It probably pays more than what I'm used to make at home or what I will make back at home. So that's where you have to know your options. It's very tough. I wish I knew all of that, but that will be tough for you. But there's a way. So I want to recruit you all in heading the current immigration policies, because they are not fair to international graduates when compared to your own colleagues you go to school with an American passport. You guys have a disadvantage when it comes to looking for jobs in a few months. So, but take advantage of what ISSO and the other offices are giving you, like that 1 year or whatever, how many years you get of OPT. I would encourage you guys, if you really want to have an experience here, take advantage of that. Of course, you might not have a budget to use your OPT on internship or something, but sometimes those little low profile stuff, let's say you contact PIH, my own organization, or you go somewhere else, you say, I want to work for you, I have 1 year OPT. So they are less freaked out about you asking for employment visas. And on the other hand, I also want you, once you get into the doors, you have to challenge these folks, pathfinders, Partners in Health. These countries, that they are working in the countries that you have more knowledge than most Americans. So you can challenge them and feel like, I know the immigration laws says you have to hire Americans first and then justify that you haven't found an American to do the job. But I also know that I'm an expert of the health of indigenous people if you are from that community. So you are more expert than that stuff. So they can justify sponsoring you. But that's why I'm really encouraging you to have OPT or some other ways to get you into the doors of the places you want, or network or whatever. Once you are there, you can negotiate better, but you will also learn how to challenge these issues we face as international students coming from less developed countries. It's very unfair. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. It is the visa issue is challenging. As we talk about having different career paths, many years ago, decades ago now, I worked in immigration law and supported people getting H-1B and O visas to work here in the States, and I know how challenging it can be. But I really like, Jean Claude, kind of the point that you bring up about kind of expertise, and Karen talked about this as well, is thinking about, what is your unique added value that you're bringing to these organizations, and helping people to understand what that is, helps to kind of elevate your profile if you're able to get your foot in the door, right, through an internship or other opportunities. So it's just a great reminder that we all have an interesting story and value that we bring. So just figuring out what that is so important. I want to be able to leave time for questions from you all. I mean, this is your opportunity to be able to ask folks some additional questions. So maybe we'll just pause there and just kind of, I'll open the floor. Maybe we can use the raise hand function. If you have a question for one of our panelists, just raise your hand. And while you all are thinking about your questions, I'm going to put into the chat, someone had asked for the slides that I shared earlier about the BNID and our job board and how to sign up for our newsletter. So the presentation is available there through that link. I don't see any hands, so I'm going to ask, we're going to keep going. I'm going to ask another question of you all since we have you here. And this is more kind of like a rapid fire. I don't want to call it lightning round because I'm only asking one question, but if so we have a bunch of students here. If you could tell students like one thing, what is one thing that they should do, at the end of the meeting, they're going to click leave meeting. If there is one action that you think the students should go ahead and do now, or maybe in the near future, that you think would be helpful in terms of thinking about careers and jobs, what would that one thing be? I'll let you think about that one for a second. What would the one actionable item that folks can do right after this meeting, or maybe in the near future? Karen, maybe we'll come to you since you're unmuted.
Yeah, I guess my first thing was like, not knowing kind of what your paths are or what you want to do, but you've got a diverse panel in front of you with diverse experiences. Connect with us on LinkedIn, and then you are going to be connected with automatically thousands of people. And you never know, there might be an organization that Simar knows somebody at that you're looking at, and now you can reach out to her and say, I loved your presentation, you were amazing. Would you mind connecting me to such and such at XYZ? Again, it's just the networking and it's just continually keeping your eyes open for opportunities, because you just never know when it's going to come in front of you. And keep those resumes up to date because we want to see them.
Great, thanks, Karen. Jean Claude, I saw you unmuted. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think those are all good ideas. Unfortunately, I go on LinkedIn, and I wish I could go on more, but of course I will check to make sure I don't miss any of you who I met here. But I'm also really impressed, most of you, at least on my side, some of you are sending me sides message on here. So we are connecting already and chatting about good stuff. So thank you. I'm sure you are doing it for others. So the one thing I want you to really think of, I brought myself here, or at least Nanako invited me. Go look for similar folks, the way you are really doing it to us, as Karen just said. Reach out to somebody, ask to meet, discuss. If you are thinking in terms of options for those who don't hold American visas, I would like you guys to start exploring. It's never too early to talk to immigration lawyers or free resources online. There's some good stuff. You guys have worked hard in your countries to get to the level you are at. And there's so many stuff you can apply here with the US immigration. There is like an example, a friend of mine, I finished a master's with, also we had the medical degree with, but coming to the US, I was able to adjust my status through employment, but he went out there, found help and applied for EB2 visa. It's like skilled immigrant right after graduation. He was from OPT to EB2. So those are some options that are hidden. You have to really justify that you are special, but I know some of you are special. So look for some of those things as you leave this call and reach out to people. Thank you.
Thank you. And Simar, over to you.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think one of the things that I would encourage all of you to do, in addition to broadening your network, thinking a few steps ahead to when you graduate and you're looking for that job. I like Jean Claude's idea about, proactively researching immigration options, if that's relevant for what you're looking for. But in addition to that, I would say, spend some time crafting your elevator pitch, whether it's verbal, written, both. If you had the opportunity to be in an elevator with someone who, is working in an agency where you want a job, what would you say to them? What are what's really the essence of your interest, your unique value? Why should they hire you? What kind of job are you looking for? Again, this doesn't have to be a long, beautiful story. It doesn't have to be a personal statement, but just really the key points that will help you take advantage of broadening your network. It'll help you be better prepared to apply for jobs, to really hone in on why this position, how you can take the skills that you have and transfer them to the opportunity that you're seeking. Yeah, I'm sure many of you are already doing that, but I would just really encourage you to sort of hone that because you never know when it'll come in handy, and hopefully it will, since you'll be applying to very many jobs.
I have a great anecdote for that, actually. I was at our BNID's networking event in October, and we have been recruiting for board members. And someone who attended the networking event came up to me and introduced herself, and she said, I'm really interested in the open board positions you have. Can you tell me more information? And I gave her a little bit of information. I said, and I'd like to know more about you. What can you tell me about you? And she just launched into this beautiful elevator pitch, but it's just like a short summary of like who she was, her career background, like the awards that she had won that like made her experience really interesting. And it like really stood out in my mind that she just had like a great story, a narrative for herself that she could just kind of weave into this conversation. It felt so natural. So just a good example of how an elevator pitch can come in handy. We have a few minutes left. Are there any questions from you all before we close? Yes, looks like Cleveland, maybe. Please go ahead with your question. Oh, we just need you to unmute.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Simar. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Jean, for Nanako for your taking care of us, hosting us as well. I'm an SID student. I'm currently on my practicum at RAIN for Sahel and the Sahara.
Oh, nice.
So my question to you guys is, I'm graduating in it should be August, I think. So what my question to you guys is that your experience at Hella, coming in, especially, I think I'll direct this mostly to Jean, coming from the medical world, and then now joining and going into the administration bit where he does, I think, monitoring and evaluation. How did you zero down to one particular career path? Since like myself, I come from a diplomatic, I used to be a diplomat in my country, for my country, and I spent 11 years in Asia. So I have vast experiences in human trafficking and refugee. But at Hella, I've realized that I have an interest now in climate change, and so many other things. So how did you manage to zero down to one thing, and how do I approach recruiters and arrange it in a way that it becomes an advantage to me? If I'm sorry, I didn't kind of like arrange it well, but I hope you understand the question. Thank you.
I do understand the question, and it's actually similar. I knew like I was a physician, but like you, I knew I also don't belong on a patient bedside, although I still do it sometimes when I go to countries like Malawi where I have a license, or I go to Rwanda, I sometimes help out. But on the other hand, I knew the needs where I can make better impact is to unlock resources that can pay 10 doctors and to serve 25 or 100 patients at a time instead of me spending that time. So I'm more into that. I wanted to look into the economics of healthcare as well as how to get the best results. So I knew what I wanted. So now, advice to you, we create our own narratives. So when I left HELA, my narrative was no longer I'm a doctor, general practitioner. It was, I'm almost similar to a physician and health economist, because Donald Shepard, who teaches, I don't know if he still teaches cost effectiveness, and I did a lot of, so I really tried to shop my courses around that will help me make my own narrative of what I want to do. But I made my previous career a base, and then my new interest becomes a specialization. So as a diplomat, if you really don't abandon that, it becomes a rich base. You build your climate interest into, you will find yourself in a Davos discussing with all of these other diplomats, but not on money, not on visa issues, but on climate issues. So you really will find a niche in the climate, but find a base, really put that. There's so many people who do climate advocacy, climate justice, but who don't have that diplomacy skill set. So build on it, don't leave it, don't go away from it, but you should really practice as a climate activist or climate practitioner with a rich diplomatic background, and you will be sent where to knock on the doors where some people without that background don't. You will be the one we sent to ambassadors, to presidents because of that, but to talk climate, not to talk about other things you used to do in your general diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I take that to heart. Thank you very much. Probably my next the other part of the question might go to Miss Karen, who is the more experienced in recruiting. What skills do you look for when employing somebody of a different skill set, like probably like mine?
Yeah, I mean, I think when Jean Claude was talking, I just kept thinking transferable skills. Just because you've been a diplomat, and that, think about the core skills that you have. What made you a good diplomat? Obviously very good communication skills, good negotiation skills, good presence. And how can you take these skills and transfer them to another industry? Kind of like me, I had great recruiting skills, but I'd never worked in nonprofit before. It's a very different industry. They didn't hire me for my nonprofit experience. They hired me for my recruitment experience. So what skills did I bring to the table? So look at whatever opportunity you're looking at, and what skills do you have that you can bring to that table? And then you're a diplomat, you can negotiate your way in. You can convince them using those skills that you have that why they should give you a chance at a certain opportunity. So it's those transferable skills, and that goes for any type of job. That's what we look for, is those transferable skills.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your questions. I'm sure other people had similar questions. They just haven't raised their hand. Any last questions? This is your last chance. Or maybe not your last chance, because you can connect with all of us on LinkedIn, but this is your last chance to ask in this moment.
Maybe I can. Yeah. So, especially for international students, I saw you like to ask questions on the side, which is nice. I appreciated it. But actually, a piece of advice, when we step into this global scene, we really have to volunteer to really take a step forward when you're invited to really ask questions. Feel free to, just like our friend Cleveland did. Next time, if you have an opportunity, regardless of how you're used to do it, some of us in our countries, our work speaks for itself. We don't really like to throw or raise a hand, but it won't work. You have to change your techniques. If you are really given an opportunity to ask a question, do it. It will do good to you. Thank you.
I will also say that most of the time, the question that you have, 5 other people have that same question. They're just too afraid to raise their hands as well. So your question, like Cleveland's questions, I'm sure other people, maybe it wasn't, maybe, you know, your background isn't in diplomacy, but you had the same questions. I had a career before Heller, you know, how do I transition to something different? Emmanuel, last question before we close the panel.
So mine is not a question. I just want to say thanks to all of you for the splendid presentation. I've connected with, I've sent invitation to Simar, Jean, and I'm finding it difficult to find Karen. So I just want to reach out to Karen. Can you please share the name that you're using on LinkedIn? I try to find you. I'm not finding you easily, or maybe your institution. Thank you.
Sure. It's under Karen Burke, B-U-R-K-E, D'Agostino. And I can put my email in the chat. But we're always happy to hear from folks. So thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm very impressed with the presentation. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Karen. Benedict, you lucked out that Emmanuel's question was so short, so we can squeeze you in as well.
All right, okay. So I don't know if mine is a question or just to find out from Jean if I'm on the right track here, because my name is Benedict. I'm from Ghana. I have a background in sports journalism. That's what I've been doing all my life as a sports journalist. And, you know, back in Ghana, I was just thinking about how young kids in our villages, you know, we get some of them go on the international stage, become so big and a lot of money to help their family. So I was just thinking about how we can use sports, soccer, you know, as a tool for development in deprived communities. And, you know, I started reading about courses. I already have a first master's in media management. I have bachelor's in public relations, and I've been doing journalism. So I don't know if I'm on the right track with what I'm doing here at Heller, you know, studying sustainable international development, because I want to do this in looking at it in a way where I see, you know, sports or soccer as a tool for development in deprived communities. Am I on the right track?
So I will take 1 minute to answer this, but also I invite you to have another one-on-one conversation if you don't mind. So I think you are on the right track. It's still a thinking and exploring phase, but you might have to really, especially closer to your own graduation date or even afterwards, keep narrowing it down so that things, your thoughts, how you are going to do it, the how-to becomes clear. But otherwise, I think the thinking here and there, and then waking up and feeling like there's an opportunity here and there to use my skills and help the youth. So it's still vague, but that's the good process to do it. But let's probably have, I'm happy to connect with you one-on-one and keep discussing if you want to. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Benedict, I'd also say that there are many organizations that use kind of sports as a entry point for everything from kind of development and education and peace building, and so you know, also happy to connect you with folks working in that space that can help just kind of help you to refine that idea, as Jean Claude was saying.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So we're at the top of the hour. I just want to say thank you to our panelists, Simar, Karen, Jean Claude. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your wealth of knowledge. I know I've learned a lot today, and thank you to all the students who have attended. It's wonderful to connect with you all. And please come to our next networking event. We'd love to get to know you better and to introduce you to many more of our Boston-based international aid colleagues. I'll pass it over to Bryan if there's anything to say before we close.
No, and I'll be happy to share that information, of course. And I just want to thank the panelists and our facilitator for being here today. As students, I find this very inspirational, primarily because it echoes a lot of the advice that I offer, but I find it that much more meaningful when it's delivered but by folks like you. So it tends to resonate more and be more impactful. So thank you all for being great colleagues.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.